What's up, y'all? My name is Jalen Jalil. Welcome back to another episode of Real Talk, where I'll be reviewing the latest box office offering, Michael. It is a biopic about none other than the great Michael Jackson. Reviews have been pretty polarizing, but it's to be expected when you have such a polarizing figure like Michael Jackson. If you're new to Real Talk, and you don't like spoilers like that, you do not like people spoiling movies for you, this may not be the best video for you. You may want to click off because I'm going to be spoiling the shit out of this movie. But can you really spoil a biopic, especially Michael Jackson? Like, we all know his story, right? But even still, if you don't want me spoiling the movie, this won't be the best thing for you. Just come back after you watch the movie. And without further ado, let's get into Michael. So the biopic Michael is directed by Antoine Fuqua, who you may remember from Training Day or any of the other Equalizer films starring Denzel Washington. He directed a lot of those. And it stars Jafar Jackson, who plays Michael Jackson in this film, who is actually Michael Jackson's nephew. I think everybody knows that already, but it's worth mentioning. It also stars Coleman Domingo, who plays Joe Jackson, the father, and it stars Nia Long, who plays Catherine Jackson, the mother. A few other notable actors in here, but I'll mention them along the way. Those will be the main three in the film. Now, as I go through the plot summary of this film, please know that this is what happened in the film. Okay, this is the plot summary of what was in the film, because I know it's going to be a lot of Michael Jackson fanatics. They're going to be like, that's not what really happened. That's not factual. That's not really what. I get it. I'm a Michael Jackson fan myself, but take that over the director. This is simply what was in the movie. So that's what I'm going to speak on, okay? And as always, stay tuned to the end, because that's where I'll be giving my personal thoughts and opinions on everything around the film, how it was done, what I would have done, all those different things, and I'll give it a rating, but stay tuned to the end. So we start the film with fanfare. Michael Jackson is walking out to the stage, and we hear the crowd going, everybody's going crazy. It's around his bad era, and he's walking through the tunnel, and the camera is coming up behind him, and the camera is positioned down and looking up at him. So if anybody who's ever looked into filmmaking or anything of that nature, you know that you always want to shoot the character from down below and look up at the character if you want them to have like this hero type of energy, or like this bigger than life kind of energy. You shoot down below when you have them look up. So that's the energy that we're starting out with. And straight from there, we cut right to the beginning. Well, close to the beginning, where it all started with the Jackson 5. Almost like how when you see those straight to BET movies where like they'll show like the character at their height, and then it'll be like, I know you're wondering how I got in this situation. And then they go straight to the beginning and they show you like where it all started. Let me take you back to where it all started. That's what happens. Like, we see him larger than life, and then we go straight back to like when he's in Gary, Indiana, and he's with his brothers. Now, this film cuts pretty fast in between transitions and different monumental years of his life. They don't even go all the way to the beginning to like when Jackson 5 was formed. We come straight to when Michael is the lead singer, they're rehearsing, and Joe is trying to get them gigs. So we immediately see Michael looking out the window, and Joe was like, get over here, let's get ready to rehearse these steps. They start rehearsing the steps, and then we go through this montage of like us seeing the Jackson 5 the Jackson family dynamic. We see that Joe is a hardworking man who works at the steel mill, and he's at the kitchen table and he's telling the kids like, I'm working hard for you guys to not have to work at a steel mill at my age. That's why we're out here gigging. That's why we're out here working hard. So we get a sense that at the very beginning, they want to push that Joe is instilling hard work into his children. So as Joe is booking them these gigs, we gradually get to see them get better. The spins get tighter, the snaps start to get sharper. They're really getting it. We finally get to a performance where they feel like they did a great job. They're coming home, they're celebrating, all the boys are celebrating. And then Joe, I know y'all don't think y'all going to sleep. Unpack those instruments, we about to rehearse again, because that wasn't it. And they all look confused because like they're all really excited. They thought they did a good job. Michael is the most vocal out of all of them in this scene, and he says, but we did a good job. Joe steps up and challenges him. Oh, you think we did a good job? And he says, yes, Joseph, I feel like we did a good job. That is the first scene where we really start to see the abuse. We start to see Michael get his ass handed to him. Joe takes off the belt and whack, 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 whack. And just in the theater, like you surround sound, you really hear every whoosh, whack, whack. And then the actor that plays the young Michael, I believe his name is Giuliano Valdi. He does a great job of like really, you start to feel the pain. Like he cries, and like each cry, like you really feel it. So that was a really like right off at the beginning, like they really like, go right on in there. But it was a scene where we really started to see the beginnings of the abuse from Joe onto Michael. And another part about this abuse was it wasn't just physical, it was also like mental and like verbal, because right after he like whooped his ass, he was like, going back in the room, big nose. And I was like, oh my goodness. Like, now I know that like factually that Joe had a really big influence on a lot of his kids having insecurities about their features, but it was just like the writing on that was just so like, but we'll get into that later. But that's what happened. And what got me there was that Catherine did nothing. Like, Catherine starts to speak up later on in the movie, but like in these earlier scenes where Michael is really getting a lot of abuse, Catherine is really just there like the wallpaper is. Like she's just there. She comforts him like on the back end, but while he's getting his ass whooped, she's mute. So, yeah. And then we later see that Michael goes and he escapes into these different stories, like these storybooks that he has with him, like on the road. He kind of, secludes himself and he just gets lost in these stories. Now, backstage at one of these Jackson 5 gigs, Joe gets to meet Suzanne DePass, who was played by Laura Harrier. And Suzanne DePass was in charge of discovering and developing artists for Motown back then. And she sees the Jackson 5, she's impressed. So she and Joe get to chopping it up, and she gives Joe her card. And we then segue into them being able to work at Motown. The segues come pretty fast. Like we skip time a good amount in this film because I guess they had a lot of ground to cover. But we skip straight into like the Motown era where they start recording with none other than Berry Gordy, who is played by Lorenz Tate. And we see in the studio that Michael is getting a feel for recording. He's fidgeting a lot. He's trying to dance along, and they're trying to teach him like, okay, you can't be dancing in the studio because we can hear that. We can hear the taps. We can hear all the moves. So like feel it, but try not to move around so much. And we see that Berry Gordy really has more of a bit of a nurturing energy towards Michael. As Michael was learning to get it right, Berry Gordy is like, no worries, like we'll get it. And Joe was on the side, like, just give me 5 minutes. I'll take him out back and beat his ass, and he'll get in there and get it right. And Berry Gordy's like, I got this. Like, I know how to make music. How about you let me handle this part, okay? And then Joe backs the hell back. He backs up. But we really get to see somebody really stand up and take a different approach to Michael other than just whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. You get what I'm saying? Michael gets to see an influence, a male influence that is a little more understanding. And we, as an audience, really get to see that contrast in this scene. And then subsequent to them putting out a record, we start to see the Jackson 5 really start to grow. We start to see them moving into higher spaces within the industry. And throughout that time, we start to see that Berry Gordy teaches Michael a lot more. They get, they develop more of a bond. There's even a moment in there where he's teaching Michael like, well, this is a business. You can lie about your age. Because I think Michael was like 10 and he told Michael to say that he was 8. And Michael was like, but I'm 10. And he was like, this is the business. You can lie about anything you want, which was crazy. But lessons like that, a lot of industry lessons he started to learn very early on through his bond with Berry Gordy. Now, also, as they're moving up in the industry, they're quite literally moving on up. Like, they got some money now. They not living in that shack they was living in before. They got some money on. So that means Michael got a bigger room. He's got more toys, more storybooks, all of this stuff. He's got more pets. We see really how quirky of a child Michael was. He has like a pet rat. And he's like really confiding in the rat. He's become like kind of friends with his pets more so than he does with like, the people around him. And at this time, we're introduced to his bodyguard, Bill Bray, who is played by Keelan Darrell Jones. And now with him being more popular, we see that he's having trouble making friends with other kids. There's even a scene where he's sitting down with his mother and she's like, why don't you, like playing with the other kids? And he's like, no, pretty much nobody really understands me. I'm different. They treat him different, whether it's because like he actually is a bit of like a quirky kind of kid, or it's because he is famous now. And I guess other kids don't know necessarily how to deal with a famous kid. So either they want something from him or they feel like he's weird. And we see in this scene that his mother is really good at nurturing him through all of those trials and tribulations that he has throughout becoming famous at such a young age. We see that his mother is always there to kind of talk him through it, be a great soundboard, and give advice. So we now fast forward to Michael now wanting to do his own solo album. And you might be like, sheesh, that's a big span of time. Listen, take it up with the director, not me. Take it up with Antoine. You feel me? But this is what was in the film. Now Michael wants to record Off the Wall. He doesn't know that it's named Off the Wall yet, but he wants to record his very own solo project. And we see that he's really passionate about his music. We see that he is matter of fact about everything that he wants to do. And he's passionate about breaking away and kind of developing his own sound. The catch with that, though, is he know Joe ain't gonna go for it. And we see that he still has a little bit of like a hesitation with like confronting Joe. Because, although this is the start of Michael's career, he's still pretty young. So he tells the label, I want y'all to tell Joe that it was your idea for me to do an album. Like, tell him that you want me to do an album. So the label acquiesces and they sit down and they have a meeting with Joe. And Joe's smug ass is basically like, yeah, I'm all for it. But he gonna have to do that shit on his own time. I own his ass from 9 to 5. And from 9 to 5, he gonna be with his brothers. He wanna go off and record some music on his own, tell him to do it on his own time. From 5 to whenever, he can do whenever he want. 9 to 5, I own his black ass. So the label's kind of just like, what? Okay. Michael takes it and he says, like, fine, we'll do what we got to do. So we see that he recorded the entirety in the film now. I don't know if this is factual. We see that he recorded the entirety of Off the Wall at night. So when he was done practicing with Jackson 5, done with whatever boot camp Joe had for him, at night, he would then go to the studio, and with Quincy Jones, he would then go to record Off the Wall. Now, we never see how he met Quincy Jones. We just know that he's now working with Quincy Jones. And Quincy Jones, by the way, is played by Kendrick Sampson in this movie. So then Off the Wall comes out and it's a success. And we start to see that success come to Michael in regard to his solo project. And we also see how Michael really loves visiting like sick children. He loves any type of like philanthropy in that regard. He loves like visiting less fortunate, especially children. He really had like a special place in his heart for visiting and uplifting sick children. We also see that he has a love for Peter Pan. He's like reading a book about Peter Pan and he's really fascinated with his character. Now in the film, I want to reiterate that in the film, seemingly they make it seem like his first nose job was inspired by the nose of Peter Pan. Now we all know that factually that is incorrect, but that's how the film goes. And apparently the family had no idea, according to the film. In the film, his family had no idea. He comes home, he's all bandaged up, he's got his shades on, he's got his hat on, trying to make a beeline straight to his room. Magically, Joe, I guess, wants to see Michael in this very second, so he comes out to the hallway and he calls Michael over, and Michael's like, shit. He goes over and Joe is just looking at him and just like, he doesn't really know what to say. And there's this moment where he and Joe kind of like face to face, and we kind of see that tension between like, I don't know, just Michael being really nervous and afraid to like, show what he's done. And like Joe is just kind of like beside himself, almost like you don't know that you were one of the main reasons for this. But, Michael barely says anything, but one thing he does whisper to Joe is like, it was for my sinuses. And Joe is just kind of like, okay. And then Michael just takes his shades back and like, he walks off into the room. And They don't speak about it. So then Michael's success grows more and more and more and more. And we start to see Joe start to resent him a lot more for his success and even antagonizes him for it. There's a scene where he calls everybody into the office where he's to tell them that they're going on, a promo tour for the Jackson 5. And Michael, I guess, is late coming downstairs. He's the last one to come into the office. And, Joe's like, oh, there he is, superstar, the man of the hour. Come on in. Da-da-da-da-da. They're just real, antagonistic shit. And then as Joe is laying out all the plans for the Jackson 5 and really setting the stage for saying how they're going to use Michael's success to tie that back into the Jackson 5 without congratulating Michael at all about his personal success, pretty much tells Michael that you're going to do this, you're going to, pour this back into the Jackson 5, we're going to go on the road, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And Michael's like, well, I got to think about this, Joe. He's like, I tell you what to think. And I think that you're going to get your black ass out on this road. And Michael's like, I'm not about to deal with this shit no more. Joe walks and challenges, steps right up to him. Michael leaves. He exits. He goes straight to the car where Bill just drives him around. He says, just drive. And they just go for a drive. And once they go for a drive, I believe they go up to top of the hills, hidden hills or something like that. They go up to the mountains. And Michael is really just expressing a lot of things to Bill. We see that Bill is also a kind of like a father figure for him and a sounding board for him throughout these times. He tells Bill, I really think he's ruining my life. Everything that I'm building for myself, he's really snatching it from under me. I wanted to go on a solo tour and I can't do that now. He's really ruining everything that I'm trying to build for myself. And Bill says, well, I think you should move. I think you should move out. And I think you should kind of get your own thing together and start building foundation for your own life. And we see that Michael kind of has second thoughts about that because he loves his family very much. And separating from his family isn't something that he can necessarily imagine at this point in time. However, he knows this is something that he has to do, so he does it anyway. And we see there's a scene where he's in a room full of executives. And there is a character, John Branca, who is Michael Jackson's attorney. This is played by Miles Teller. They're in the room and they're trying to figure out what the next steps will be for Michael Jackson. And John basically tells him, there's no one like you. I know that you can go to the stratosphere. I can make you a star. Michael tells everybody else, leave the room. You stay here. Everybody else, leave the room. He says, okay, I believe you. I believe you'll do all the things that you say you're going to do. Your first act of business, fire Joe as my manager. And he does. Next thing you know, we see a fax come over to Joe that says, as of today, you are no longer the manager of Michael Jackson. Mwah. Peace out. And Joe is heated. And around this time, we finally see Catherine stand up for Michael because clearly Joe was heated about the whole being fired thing. I mean, I guess anybody would, especially if you're the father. Gotta be a real kicking ass, huh? But Catherine really talks some sense into him and says, listen, he's a grown man. He's gonna do what he's gonna do. And at the end of the day, you can't act like he is a great big part of why this family is successful. Around this time, we also see his loneliness because there's a division that starts to grow between him and his brothers. There's a time where he comes back and he wants to play Twister with his brothers, and they all got shit to do. One got a date, the other one's like, oh, we about to go out on the town, this, that, and the third. And we see the division between them really grow because they want to take full advantage of this new success that they have. They want to go out on dates, they want to go out on the town. And Michael's more so like, I just want to be around my family. I just want to be around my pets. I just want to be around my books and all of those things. So we really start to see that divide, and we start to see, even within his family, how lonely he is around this time. So now we're rolling right into the making of Thriller, and we see Michael telling John Branca how he wants his career to be, how he wants this era to be specifically. He wants to be mysterious. He doesn't want to do interviews. And John Branca's like, well, that's going to be really hard because we want you to be larger than life, but you actually have to get out here and promote. So how are we going to do that if you want to be mysterious and you don't want to do interviews? We see indication that there's another nose job here. They don't say anything about it, but we see a bandage across the top of his nose, indicating that, he went in for another one. And this is when the CGI really starts to kick in. This is like before, I think it was really like prosthetics and a lot of makeup. Like as the nose gets smaller, clearly like CGI has to kick in, and this is around the era where they really CGI'd the hell out of Jafar. So while he's in the studio, he's watching TV and there's gang violence going on the television. He gets this idea to bring both sides of the gangs together for one of his dance rehearsals. And he's in the dance rehearsal and he's, doing all the moves, and everybody is excited. Everybody's just in awe of his creativity, just all of his choreography, just like how he moves. Like he really just shines. And these are people who he is able to bring together with his art, with his creativity, with his moves, his dancing, just him being himself. So he promises to put them in his short film, and then he and Quincy come together to create Thriller. We see the making of Thriller, and then once it's released, Michael is out of here. He's like off into the stratosphere. Like he's out of here. Now, Joe, again, being the amazing father that he is, he chooses to use Michael's success to push a victory tour for the Jackson 5. But the only way that they can get this done is if they pull a big sponsorship, Pepsi. We need you guys to do a commercial for us. Michael doesn't want to do the commercial. So, Joe, you're going to do this because you're not going to turn your back on your family. And he starts to guilt trip Michael and saying, like, what are you going to do? You're going to be around yes people. You're going to be around people who don't understand that you like to talk to pets. Like people that don't get how quirky you are, don't get how weird you are. We're your family. We love you through all of that. You're just going to be around yes people. Do you really want a life like that? He says, fine. Yes, I'll do it. So we all know what happens in the Pepsi commercial. If not, I'll let you know. While filming the Pepsi commercial, there is pyro that goes off behind Michael, and some of the pyro catches on his hair. His hair catches on fire on one of the takes. This results in him having second and third degree burns on his scalp. And through the incident, we see the entire family waiting while he is in intensive care. The doctor's basically like, you pretty much almost lost your son. Like this was really bad. Like if the fire would have spread like to the side of his face, this would have been a completely different situation. And Joe's main concern throughout all of this is, but he's going to be able to get ready for the tour, right? And the doctor has to reiterate to him, I don't think you understand. He was almost out of here. I think you should more so focus on the fact that your son is still here. And even with hearing that, Joe has this intense moment where he's like, I don't think you understand. I know my boy. And the only thing that's going to heal him is getting back up on that stage. So how long until he's able to do that? Father of the motherfucking year. So naturally, with him being so close to losing his life, he comes to grips with a lot of things, and he loses all inhibitions in regards to like the fear that he has with addressing his father and stepping out and being his own man. So he makes a very bold decision to say, I'll do the tour, but once that is over, I'm done and I'm never looking back. They are on the tour, and one of their dates, he is out there, everybody's having a good time, and he has an announcement to make. And he tells the band to bring it down, bring it down. He says, I want to say that this is the last time you will see us on stage together. It's been amazing, but this is the last time you will see the Jackson 5 together. And Joe is on the side looking like fuming. And he looks over at Joe, and the music kicks back up, dun, 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 and they just move on. And he goes off to the side of the stage, and you see the moment where even his brothers are kind of like, they didn't even know he was going to make that announcement. But he's on the side of the stage, and you see that he like, there's a big sigh of relief that he lets off. So he knows that Joe was on the other side of the stage. He walks to the back. Joe walks up and approaches him and says, like, what the hell did you just say? Why did you say that? He walks off, and Bill, his bodyguard, steps in and holds Joe back to say, like, he's his own man. Like you can't do nothing with him now. It's out of your hands. And, whole time Joe is yelling, I'm still your father, I'm still your father. And now they have this transition where as Michael is walking away down the hall from the victory tour, it transitions back to that very first scene we saw where he is like, Michael, Michael, Michael. Everybody is screaming at the bad tour where he's walking out. They transition to that where he's in the tunnel walking out for his show for the bad tour. And then from there, he goes out on stage, gives an amazing performance. His story continues. Let's first start with the cinematography. It was filmed in, I don't know if it's because I was in the theater, and things always look super high definition in theater. It looked so high definition that majority of it looked like CGI to me. It was just really super like high definition. And I don't know if it's because they did use CGI in the film. It was just certain moments that just seemed, I don't know, it kind of take me out of it because it was so super high definition. But I don't know. I guess we'll see once that comes out to streaming if that like kind of levels off, because I've seen movies before that like in the theater they looked a certain kind of way, but then once it came to like being released on DVD or to streaming, it looked a little more regulated in that regard. Clearly Jafar needed CGI for like the nose, but I felt like at some points either like on Coleman Domingo, I felt like either his makeup was really strong or they added some CGI to him as well. Because he just like, even standing next to other characters, like other characters would look normal and then they would cut to Joe and it was like jump scare, like shit. But some of that CGI was kind of like a little bit jarring at times for me. But again, I'm looking at it on a big ass screen like this and it's like super high definition in the theater. However, aside from that, I liked how everything looked, the color grading, everything. I thought it looked really great, especially his performance scenes and them recreating a lot of the music videos. I think a lot of great detail went into that. And I felt like it was shot pretty well. Again, there were certain moments where like when they would pan out to the crowd, that it just looked a little sloppy. Well, not necessarily sloppy, it just looked inconsistent. Like when they were trying to get like close-ups of the crowd, I just didn't believe that was, it just didn't match. It didn't match the rest of it, especially because when they're getting these big shots of like this stadium crowd, clearly that is CGI. But when they're trying to match that with actual real live footage of the extras that were supposed to be playing the audience, it didn't match up well for me. But aside from those little critiques, I think overall it did look great. But I mean, it should. It was a $200 million film. I mean, I don't expect it to look terrible when you spend that much money on a film. The acting I felt was great. I felt like everybody did a great job. I don't feel like, how do I say this? I don't feel like it was a very demanding type of film in regard to the acting. I feel like emulating was really the key point here. I feel like you needed great character study. So I felt like for Jafar, I feel like studying Michael's like movements and studying his like mannerisms and his voice, that was key. And Coleman Domingo studying maybe like Joe's mannerisms, and same with Nia Long studying Catherine's mannerisms. I feel like those were key. But in regard to actual like emoting, like acting outside of emulating a character, the actual acting in it, like, maybe like the emoting, like the real like struggle scenes. You know how like, you see movies and it's just like they're acting their ass off. They're really like emoting and they're angry and then they're like, they're really showing a wide array of emotions and things of that nature. I feel like this film wasn't necessarily like, heavy on a lot of that. And that has nothing to do with the actors. That's more so on the writing. The writing was pretty vapid, but again, we'll get to that in a second. But the acting itself, I think kudos goes to all of the actors for being able to emulate the actual people that they were portraying. You can tell a big focus for this film were the performance aspects, like the music videos and him performing on stage. Overall, the actors did great with what they were given. I feel like if they would have gotten a more complex script, they would have taken it even higher. But, an actor can only work with the script that they're given, The writing was very just kind of surface level for me. Like, for instance, when he's whooping Michael and he says, all right, going back in the back room with your big nose. clearly we know the story of like Joe imparting these insecurities in all of his kids. But from what I heard, like the story was like he used to say all the time. I saw it in a Michael interview. He used to say all the time that Joe would say, "Oh, you got that from your mother's side of the family. Or you didn't get it from me. You got it from your mother's side of the family." I feel like they could have made a scene like that. Like they already had a scene of them at the dinner table. Maybe could have had a scene at the table, all the kids are joking about like, whatever. And then somehow like noses comes up, or like, maybe the kid got like, one of the kids smacks the other kid and he hits him in the nose. He's like, "Oh, you hit me in my nose, da 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 da." And one of the kids calls each other big nose. And maybe Catherine says, don't say that. Don't say that. And then maybe the father says, they got it from your side of the family. They ain't get it from my side of the family. Something that's just a little less like straight to the point, because these are the things that they've been indoctrinated to think about one another. And then just something so simple as that will show the audience they're like, damn, now the kids are calling each other big nose, simply just because the father has been going around saying that. You know what I'm saying? Little things like that can really just show how deep those things that Joseph said ran throughout their entire family. And it's something so simple. You can say a lot with something so simple, just like that. You could have told a bigger story just with that. Not saying you got to use my idea, because I'm really just thinking that off the top of my head. But I'm like, that would have been that would have told a lot more than whip, 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 go to the back, big nose. And then nobody says anything. Nobody addressed it. I don't know, shit like that. I was like, that's weird. Like, y'all got access to all these different writers and y'all couldn't come up with a better way to show how Joe was imparting these insecurities on their children than that. But that's just one example. There are a few others, but I don't want to be here all day. Let me know if you have any others in the comment. All in all, though, I will say that I actually like the film. I feel like once I kind of tailored my expectations to what it was going to be, which was essentially something that the estate was going to be proud of. I saw somebody commented that this film was exactly what the estate would have wanted, which was a Michael advertisement. And I think that puts it perfectly. Like, I don't think this film was something that was meant to be like a deep dive into Michael's life. I don't think it was anything where the audience was supposed to learn anything new. I think that the big budget studios and the estate came together and they wanted a film that would be something that everybody could just come and like, it could be kind of like, I guess, a feel-good movie where everybody could come and just watch it and just see like what the overarching like energy around this big superstar, this big megastar was. Because I mean, even in essence, it's rated, PG-13, so it's tailored for anyone from like the children all the way to the grandparents. Like the entire family alike can come to the theaters. They can partake in these big moments that we all came to love when we think about Michael Jackson. And I think they succeeded at that. I could definitely see this film being something that even once it comes out on like streaming or DVD or anything, like, if it's around like holiday time and the family's all together and, maybe we're playing some Michael Jackson music and people just want to be like, oh, let's pop in the Michael Jackson movie. I think this will be more digestible than like, say, the Jackson 5 American Dream, but it's like 5-6 hours. I feel like this is something that's easily digestible by people who just want to watch it, get an overview of the story, just get that feel of the magic that is Michael Jackson, understand, how much he loved animals, how much he loved, the sick children, and he loved like just like giving to people. He loved performing. He loved his music. He loved all these things. I feel like we touched on the main things, although like the little small minute details that were, that are still important, I feel like were kind of missed. But I feel like the overall idea for this film was just to be that, something that everybody could come together and it'd be like kind of like a feel-good Michael movie. I enjoyed it in that aspect. With all that in mind, and I could say more, but we can sound off in the comments because I don't want this video to go on for too long. But I will say I'll give this movie, out of 5 stars, I'll give it 3.5. 3.5. I think that's pretty solid. I don't know. I was still wrapped up in the magic once I left the theater. When I left the theater, I kind of like I was inching towards 4, but after like the dust settled, I'm like, I give a solid 3.5. So I give 3.5 stars out of 5. Let me know what you would give this film. Tell me all the things that you would want to change and things that you would want implemented, and just anything surrounding Michael or the film period. And I'll see you next time on Real Talk. Peace out. JJ.